I'm gonna call the regular meeting of the College Truckee Sanitation Agency for April 16th to order. We all stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And let's do roll call. We have two remote board members.
We have Dale Cox. Oh, who's even unmuted really quick.
Yes, to unmute himself. I can't unmute. I'll prompt for it.
Dale, can you unmute yourself, please? There you go.
I'm with you.
Yeah, okay. Dale, Scott Wilson,
Here.
Director Clement,
Here.
Director Wilkins,
Present.
and Director Tresson.
Here. Okay, at this point, we'll open the meeting to public comment. If anybody has anything they'd like to address the board on that's not on the agenda, now is the time to do so. Full audience, but I think you guys are here for something else. Do we receive any public comment or having any public comment, written public comment, or anybody online?
No.
Okay. We will close public comment at this time. Item 3 is the board's opportunity to modify the agenda. Does anybody have any interest in modifying the agenda? Here? Seeing on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll keep the agenda as is. Item 4 is Professional Achievements Awards, Anniversaries, and Staff Acknowledgement. Vicki, is that you?
Being President Treason and directors. This morning, as I do on a monthly basis, I would like to acknowledge some staff this month for quarterly safety suggestions. And that would be 2 employees that are both in attendance today. And we'd like to thank Jesus Sarate and Matt Nitz for their April 2025 safety acknowledgements. And Matt and Judy, thank you for providing the suggestions, and thank you for continued safety at TTSA.
I apologize. I think I know Jesus. Thank you. Matt, thank you very much. Yeah. Appreciate you guys keeping your eyes open, making the place safer. Is that it?
That is it for this month.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
That brings us to the consent agenda. Anybody on the board have anything they want to pull from consent? Hearing not, nothing, we will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Cox, seconded by Wilkins. Public comment, hearing none. Motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, Mr. President. We need to do roll call votes today since we have remote participants.
Thank you, council. Okay, roll call.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
and Director Tresson.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, moving to the regular agenda. First item is a presentation on the classification and compensation study. So, Vicki will make the presentation on the study.
Thank you, General Manager, and again, good morning, President Treason and directors. In August of 2023, the board approved staff to begin the RFP process for classification and compensation study. The reason for the study was related to a discussion about employee benefits. Staff were aware from the previous class and comp study that benefits were attached to salary. In order to gain an understanding of total compensation as it related to TTSA's benefits, the study was recommended. In September 2023, Gallagher was chosen to perform TTSA's classification and compensation study. Items of significance that were accomplished during the study include the list of comparable agencies that was chosen and approved at the March 2024 Board of Directors meeting. Many grade 5 wastewater treatment plants were chosen specifically for the comparables. Additionally, several local agencies were chosen. Previous class and comp study ended with several positions not having enough viable data and were therefore aligned with other positions. And therefore that lack of data was perceived to be the result of not having chosen wastewater treatment plants in the past. The GM held several staff meetings during this process and also sent out a benefits survey to staff to determine which benefits were most important and to determine if staff were looking for changes in benefits. The survey determined that staff did not desire changes in benefits with the exception of the COLA calculation. Gallagher attended the May 2024 Board of Directors meeting and answered questions related to cost of living and cost of labor. The board opted to choose and use the median unadjusted total compensation data. Provided today is the complete study as well as additional work we requested from Gallagher. Further information related to the study and recommended next steps will be provided by the general manager in an additional agenda item. But for now, management and staff recommend the acceptance of the Gallagher classification and compensation study. Any questions?
Put it up to the board.
My first question would be, how were the comps selected?
Essentially, wastewater treatment plants that are grade 5 plants were chosen within the state of California. And generally speaking, in a close enough proximity to TTSA. There were also local agencies, part of our member agencies, as well as other wastewater treatment plants within this area. And I believe the only one within this area was South Tahoe PUD. And correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, on that one.
You're correct.
But essentially, we stuck to the grade 5 wastewater treatment plants so that we could be comparable to TTSA, as we are also a grade 5 plant.
Is there any reasons why we didn't pick anything in Nevada that was nearby?
Yeah, generally speaking, we want to choose from a pool that would provide us with staff within the same classifications. Nevada is a separate, Nevada's comparison of the grade 5 plant is different than California. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but a grade 5 in California is a grade 4 in Nevada, so the two are not comparable. Again, we were generally trying to stick with the comparables within California grade 5 and trying to get true and good comparable data, as the last study did not necessarily provide that for specific positions that are in the industry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Scott, any questions regarding the report?
I'm good, thank you.
Dale?
You know, I still have my main concerns. I've been voicing these concerns ever since we started talking about this rate in comp study, and that is, I really feel that TTSA is in a situation all by itself, given the fact that geographically we're located in an area where the cost of housing and the cost of living is so far above other places in the state, it gives me concern that to draw our people and to draw our talent, most of our employees are driving, at least some of them are driving 100 miles a day just to show up to work. And, you know, this has all been manifested by the COVID and the surge of people coming to Tahoe and driving the cost of housing up. And I really feel that we are in line with everybody else that is in the wastewater reclamation business. However, geographically, we are at a situation that has made us very difficult to recruit our help, keep our help, and to be able to compete with other water treatment facilities because of our geographic location. And when you drive 400 miles a week, 1,600 miles a month, 16,000 miles a year, not counting the wear and tear and gas on your vehicles, this has significant impact on our ability to get qualified help and maintain qualified help. We can pay our people exactly what the other agencies are paying in our geographical region, but I just have to say that I've watched this transition over the last 10 years, specifically the last 5 years, and our employees are at a gross disadvantage because where we are located and the cost of housing. And when you have a medium income house in the lower income areas of our region, which is Truckee, and the medium income house or the medium cost of housing is $1.4 million for just a medium house, we've got issues. We're paying our people. We're paying our people well. But what it costs our people to show up to the job to perform, it's significant. And it concerns me that we're basing our salaries and our compensations on neighboring agencies and like agencies in the state, and geographically, we are not compatible. End of statement.
Well, Dan?
Just a couple comments, and some of it's triggered by Bill's comments and some by Bert's questions. So I think it was about a year ago when we started this class of comp study, plus or minus. We had done another one about 3 years prior to that. Our prior class and comp study used more agencies that were closer to us geographically. So it did use some Reno agencies that were in the wastewater treatment business, and it used more Sacramento agencies. When we kicked off the study this time, one of the first conversations we had at the board level was whether to stick with those agencies, the comparable agencies that we had used last time, or whether to change them. What we did is we changed them and we subtracted agencies that were closer geographically and added more agencies in the Bay Area, where the Bay Area has a higher cost of living than Reno does. And some of it was in response to the comments Dale was making just now. So when we got that data back, the consultant team also brought us data related to cost of living and cost of labor in the comparable agencies we had. And I think everyone here expected that what that data was going to show is that our cost of living and cost of labor here in Truckee was higher. But what it showed was the cost of living and cost of labor for those Bay Area comparable agencies was actually higher. So we then had a conversation about whether or not to apply an adjustment. And if we had, that adjustment would have reduced the salary ranges that we're looking at in this class and comp study. The direction from the board at that time was to not apply that adjustment. So, the net result of that is we're seeing in this study recommendations for salary ranges to go up, on average, 20-ish%. Some positions higher, some positions lower. But that was a culmination of some of those prior direction and decisions made by the board to swap out the comparable agencies and then not apply that downward cost of living and cost of labor adjustment. So those were some of the dials that had been turned, I think, prior to you joining the board, Bert. The staff checked in with us at 2 or 3 key decision points as the study was evolving related to comparable agencies, whether or not we wanted to put that adjustment in. And that's the kind of the result of some of that direction is really what's driving what we're looking at right now. So, anyway.
So apples and oranges, we have 2 studies.
Yes, in terms of the comparable agencies, yeah.
And what's the involuntary turnover rate?
The involuntary turnover rate, I don't know that off the top
In
of
terms
my head.
of people,
What's the attrition
leaving,
rate
taking,
of people that aren't being fired?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
Is it high, is it low?
Calculated it recently, Richard, it was less than, I want to say, 4%. I don't remember though exactly. It's been a couple of months at least.
and it's what you're getting at is if our goal is to attract and retain high quality employees, question is what's the right balance point for wages and benefits to accomplish that, right?
Yeah, and then where else would they go?
Yeah.
That's the other piece, right? And driving 100 miles in the Bay Area is very common. I've worked in Palo Alto and people were driving from Tracy. It's not a problem, happens all the time. So,
Right.
So the report is in front of us. I think that Gallagher collected the data, they did check in with us, we approved the competitive agencies. I think the data is probably accurate. They looked at it both unadjusted with those cost of labor, cost of living adjustments. We define the benchmark positions. On page 14, it's a tool. This isn't a science. I think too many folks try and say you end up with numbers and therefore they got to be, some sort of factual number. Gallagher says they would like to reiterate the report and findings are meant to be a tool for TTSA to create and implement an equitable compensation plan. The strategies are designed to attract and retain excellent staff. However, financial realities and TTSA's expectations may also come into play when determining appropriate compensation philosophies and strategies. I think they've given us the data, and then it's really, our job, management's job to look at that and try and come up with a way of, assigning what the appropriate step we should take in terms of adjustments, if any, to the salary schedule or benefits. Again, the goals are to have a salary and benefits that help us recruit and retain highly qualified employees. We need to do the job here. It's super, super important. We have to also be prudent users of the public's funds. This is money that our customers are paying. And there's always a balance, trying to balance that. You don't want to compensate so much also that if you have an unhappy employee, they have nowhere to go because you're paying too much. You want to be, it's a balancing act. And, I know that every agency up here at some point or other is constantly doing these compensation studies to figure out where they should be paying their folks, and it's a challenging task. What we have before us is a report that's given us information that then staff has provided us with a recommendation on the salary schedule. I just say that, it's a tool, it's a challenging tool. I would counsel staff and management that, how we did it this time may not be the way we do it next time. I wish there was a better way to really figure out what that sweet spot is to balance, the public's funds and pay our employees the right compensation. We have what we have here. I think Gallagher right now, the task before us is to approve the report. I think they've done what we've asked them to do in the report. Next time around, because 5 years from now, a lot of times it's about a 5-year cycle. You sort of go back out and see how things are. There may be a different approach the board or management may want to take, but this is what we asked for, and I think they've done what we've asked for. The action that we're being asked to take now is acceptance of the report, which is the data. We're not taking any actual action at this moment on adjusting the salary schedule.
Next.
What's that?
But that's next.
But that's next, yeah. So I just being clear. Yeah. So at this point, if there's no other director's comments or public comments on the report itself, take a motion.
Did we get public comment?
I'll ask if there's any comment on the report itself from staff here. Hopefully you guys, I know you had I always forget the name of the team that you had together.
We also.
Right, that, if there were any comments from that group on the data provided, appreciate staff's involvement in the process. Okay, so no public comment.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the report,
I'll second that.
seconded by Wilkins. And we'll do a roll call.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
and Director Tressi.
Yes,
Motion approved.
okay. The report has been accepted. We'll move to item 2, which is discussion and consideration on a resolution adopting a revised salary schedule, org chart, implementation guide, benefit changes, and job classification descriptions.
So Vicki did a good job, I think, of covering the background of the study, so I won't touch too much on that. Again, just highlight 6 different touch points with the board, plus individual touch points as we work through the process, working with a focus group with an overall goal of getting staff that were Y-rated out of the Y-rated classification, moving classic employees hired before April 1st, 2021 to pay their employee contribution for CalPERS. Ultimately, no reduction in pay. One I failed to mention in there was we have the discrepancy between PEPRA, classic who's pay their own, and then just the historical classic employees. So that was another goal, was to try and best match up between those 3 different distinctions as we could. So the study used the PEPRA pay scales as we did the research. I think ultimately Gallagher did provide what was asked of them. We touched base with them on areas of concern. They worked through those areas of concern, providing the report with their recommendations. I'm bringing a recommendation today to the board for consideration, is to proceed with the salary schedule as proposed by Gallagher with the changes in four positions. I'm recommending something different. I can touch base on those if you'd like. They were in the report that went out and were highlighted. Proceed with a one and done step-to-step implementation. After I'm done rambling on, Liz will come up and talk the dollars and cents of the impact of the implementation, both for option one, my recommendation, and option two. And that is also to proceed with a new CalPERS contract that adds classic employees hired before April 1st, 2021 to those that will pay their contribution of 8%. Reclassification of 3 positions. As we worked through the study, we also took an opportunity to look at our workload and what best works for the agency. And that was currently we have our information technology and SCADA are combined classifications. That is to split those out to have information technology specialist ranges as well as SCADA specialist ranges as separate. And then that's a reclass of our customer service to an admin analyst / customer service, and one of our account technicians from payroll specialist to administrative analyst, payroll and human resources. Those 2 positions will provide us some additional resources to assist Vicki as well as assist other managers during budget time and do some analytical tasks that we don't currently have any staff to perform. Proceed with organizational chart as attached. We're moving IT out of the maintenance room. That was moved there under the previous GM when the IT manager left. It's been an okay home, but probably been better suited in a professional realm. So information technology would move to the technical services manager. SCADA would remain in maintenance and move under SCADA would move under the E&I supervisor. Those 2 groups work hand in hand in this day and age, and it's a better fit there. Proceed with updated job descriptions as outlined. And then, as Vicki mentioned when we did the survey, staff is desiring a change in the way the COLA is handled. And that would be moved to 100% up to 4% maximum. And then anything over that would be at the board's discretion. Currently, there is a formula for this that calculates the COLA, and that is 100% up to 3%, 75 between 3.01 and 6%, 50% incremental increase between 6.01 and 12, and then anything over 12 would be to the board for approval. Looking at the last 5 years, the CPI in 2018 was 3.6, 2019 3.3, 2020 3.0, 2021 1.7, 22 was 7.4, 23 5.4, 24 3.3, and this year is 3.1. Just to give a little historical data on that consideration. Option 2 is basically the same layout, other than it splits it out over 2 years. That would require two contracts with FERS, one for this coming year, one to be drafted again in the following year. And it basically splits everything 50-50. So the increases as outlined by Gallagher would be 50% of the percentage. And then the FERS pickup would be 4% of the 8. So with that said, I'll let Liz come up and hit the financial aspects of the implementation for both options, and then turn it over to the board for discussion.
Okay, let's talk about the financial reality. I'm gonna start a reality show and call it that. See if people will watch it or not. So I won't repeat how we got to where we are, but I will quickly tell you how I got to getting to this chart. Direction was provided by the board that we were to use unadjusted total compensation data, the median of the comparators. On the sheet from Gallagher, that was a 17% underrun for us. That's what that information showed. So at that board meeting, I did $6.8 million times 17% equals $1.15 million. So I knew the ballpark that we were playing, right? If I came back with something more than that, it's going to really have to justify it. If I came back with something less than that, I didn't meet the objectives of what the board gave us direction for. Weighted average was a very popular question during this process because the classifications were benchmarked, but not all of them. So when you take the weighted average approach to that same chart, it only reduces it by 0.2. The weighted average reduction was 16.8% of our salaries were under the comparators. So the resulting salary schedule that was put in the packet and that I'm going to show you a chart about came to a 17.17% average. The weighted average is 15.25 though, and that takes into account the 8% that will be coming back from the classic employees. Without that 8%, if we weren't taking that back, it would have been a 19.2% increase. So this implementation plan, as Richard noted, assumes step to step. If you're in the top step of your current salary band, I assumed you were going to the top step of your new salary band. It begins June 29th, which would be a total of 27 pay periods at this rate versus the normal 26 in a fiscal year. We're starting it a little bit, one pay period earlier to align with the CalPERS contracting. That would take effect July 1. The overall budget impact is approximately $1.2 million, and the annual cost avoidance for the agency is approximately $300,000. That's what the agency is paying right now on behalf of classic employees that they no longer will be paying because the employee will be paying it. All right, let's take a look at my most favorite chart. I'm going to make it everyone's most favorite chart because I feel that it is a basic representation of what we're trying to accomplish here. I'm taking a lot of data, a lot of numbers, a lot of assumptions, and trying to make it a visual presentation. So let's quickly walk through how we orient this chart, and then I'll tell you the details about it. The bars are your money. The mountains are how you spend your money. The orange bar is a beginning balance, right? We don't spend all of our money every single year. We roll some cash over. The orange, yellow, or the yellow part of that.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I don't know if Dale and I can see the chart you're referring to.
Gotcha. Okay, we are working on that technology as we speak.
Okay. Thank you.
Rochelle, would you email it to them? If you can't get it other. Rochelle will also email it to you.
Okay.
Would you like me to wait until you see it to keep going?
No, you can keep going.
Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so bars and mountains. Bars are money. The orange part is your beginning balance. The yellow is what we anticipate earning throughout the fiscal year. The mountains behind it, which you'll see go up and down like mountain ranges, are how we spend our money. It's not always consistent. The green is our operating expenditure. The olive color, I don't really know what we call that color, but the color above the green is your capital expenditures. And that tiny dark green slice across the top is our existing debt service payments. The assumptions related to this chart are the same assumptions that I showed you when we built the FY25 budget. And at FY25 budget time, I said, if we stayed on track for our capital projects, we were going to need to issue debt by FY27. That's what this picture shows. If you look at how we end FY26, the mountain is above the bar. We spent more than we took in. So that means we would start FY27 negative. That is not an option. That is also not our reality today. I have two more charts, easy for me to say. I have two more charts to show you that will get us to the reality of today. Is everyone on the same understanding of the chart that we're looking at right now before I move forward? Yes.
You say beginning balance, is that the fund balance from the prior year positive?
It is, and it's
So
Fund 10 and Fund 6. I am not looking at Fund 2 or our emergency fund. I'm only looking at general fund and how we're spending our replacement rehab upgrade money.
Okay, so if you took out the beginning balance, it would be underwater every single year.
Yes, but we also anticipate making money in 1 year and carrying it over to the next. That was assumed in the rate model.
And this is that reduction in fund balance primarily tied to capital project activity, right?
Yes,
We didn't have any capital projects going on, our fund balance was growing.
correct.
But that's not realistic.
We did increase rates 30% the first year of the Prop 218 notice. So that was a reality that the agency was trying to achieve because they hadn't increased rates. And then the Prop 218 slides down, right? It was what, 30%, maybe 2018 down to 13, all the way down to 3.5. And so we're in that second year of that.
And then you have to go back out.
Well, it depends on the context of the conversation. When we look through the lens of MBR, depending on when that project starts, we may want to go back out and reissue for FY '29. But right now, the Prop 218 takes us through FY '29.
Okay, so if this chart covers all the rating.
I apologize, I lied, FY '28. We would need a new Prop 218 by FY '29. Okay? Let's take a look at the next chart, which looks very similar. Did I actually change it? Oops, I got really excited. Okay. Same chart, new assumptions. Nothing's changed with the bar and mountains, except now you see this brown slice that goes in between our operating and our capital. That's the $1.2 million implementation for class and comp. I've also inflated it 5% every future year to account for it growing COLAs, step increases for people who are not at the top step. So the illustration to take away from here is that by adding that $1.2 million, our FY '27 year didn't get any worse. We're still starting FY '27 negative. It didn't draw it down anymore. But here's what's not realistic about this chart. We did not spend, nor are we going to spend as an agency, $12 million in Fund 6 capital expenditures this year. And this chart anticipates that. It has a different timeline for the digestion improvement project. That's the largest project that drives your peaks and valleys in your mountains right now on this chart. So after having several internal conversations and looking at a more realistic timeline for that, here's where we're at. So I have now embedded the $1.2 million of class and comp into that green operating area. I assume from one chart to the next, you said yes. So we've embedded that in our operating run rate. Our capital is still above it. Based on the fact that digestion improvement is not going to ramp up until this time next year, and we start seeing spending for it, we no longer start FY '27 negative. We're pretty tight. It's not something I would necessarily say I feel extremely comfortable about. I might want to start looking at debt issuance as we enter into that year, but it's driven by digestion improvement timeline, not class and comp.
So Liz, this assumes that we're not borrowing any money for the digester improvement project. Which
Correct.
in our last meeting, at least the financial advisor was suggesting we should do.
Yes, and your rate model that was put together and approved prior assumed you issued debt for digestion improvement.
So this assumes we're doing the digestion improvement project on a cash basis.
Yes, and see how we start FY '29 negative now? I would issue debt before then so that that didn't happen. We would have conversations probably this time next calendar year to start saying we need to start doing debt, entering into FY '27 with a less than $10 million balance to enter the year. Not a good place to be.
The financial advisor was suggesting that we're better off with $25 million in the bank and having $25 million in debt than we are in having no money in the bank, but not owing anything, is what I remember.
That is a very, very true statement. And Stephen and I have had several iterations of conversations since that board meeting to figure out what that right timing is for us. Stephen's assumptions at the last board meeting did include us spending that $12 million for digestion improvement this year. And that was the driver of issue debt today. Talking to him about current projections, he agreed that maybe looking into a shorter term debt vehicle to help us get through digestion improvement until the agency starts showing that they're spending money more rapidly and then issuing that debt. Same concept, we're just going to take a slightly longer timeline. And this chart lines us up for that. That's what we'll be doing in FY '27.
Okay, thanks.
It would also be reflected, that little green slice, your debt payment would increase that green slice, that little tiny part at the top. We have a very small amount of debt outstanding that we need to pay off. That's where that payment would go.
So you just moved capital out a year on this chart.
We
And then you
realigned
added-
it, yes.
And then you added the code.
And we made the capital, yes, we moved it. It's more realistic now.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out why the hole's bigger out in 28 and 29. If it's just a tiny difference on capital.
There's additional projects after digestion improvement that get added to it.
So you did change the capital.
They were there as the timing of digestion improvement. Digestion improvement in Fund 6 is about $20 million, and we thought we'd spend about half this year and half next year. It's some next year and then ramps out for the next 2 years, and we pick up some projects in 29. And we'll go over that next meeting when I bring a draft budget.
Do you have a cash number projected in here so we can see what the cash actually does in all those years?
I do not.
It goes negative or not? Or we have enough in the bank,
Based on this, FY 29 would start negative cash.
so it would be negative cash.
That's why the bar is underneath. And that's why it was important to me to show our balance rolling over so that you can see you begin the year underneath amount.
So in 28, it starts to.
Yeah, 27 is a little too tight though, like I said, for comfort. So I would start having those debt conversations then. But by 28, we have to actually be issued in the market and have bond proceeds in our bank.
Okay, so what's the shortfall in 29 on dollars? Between the spending and that? And
That's about $5 million,
5 million?
between 3 and 5.
And you want to issue how much debt?
Well,
50 million?
25 to $30 million.
Yeah, you need the window dress. You're gonna need more.
Yes, that's just the first tranche. We'll be in the market for several years together.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm talking about it at the beginning.
Yes. I've also thought about leveraging
Yeah, that's fair. Short term. Got it.
short term, looking at extended line of credit from
Yeah.
US Bank. We have a great relationship with them. They are large in the market for that. It's an option to consider that I would bring to you all in the portfolio.
So it's a coupon for them.
Yes.
That'll never die.
Nope. And they gotta have it in their portfolio. So lucky us.
And they'll give you everything you want. It'll just be more expensive.
Questions? Stunned silence?
Just kind of back to the, weighted average numbers.
Sure.
So I think what I heard you say is that, if agency-wide, it would be, if we adopt new salary ranges consistent with the study that we just accepted, agency-wide, on average, salary ranges would go up 17.
15.25 for weighted average.
Well, that's with assuming that's cash related to some money related to classic employees paying first.
Yes.
So
Yes.
salary ranges, what's that?
17.
The salary ranges go up 17% on average.
Yes.
And there's probably not any position that actually goes up 17%. Some probably go up 20 or 25, some go up less.
Yes.
The average increase in upside potential, I'll call it, for earnings across the agency are 17%. And then if we were to just automatically place employees at the same location relative to the top of the salary range that they currently exist, that would be a 17% increase, but then a little bit of that increase would be the cash effect of that would be reduced because classic employees who we're paying their share of PERS for would begin paying for their own PERS, their share of PERS directly, which is a little bit less cash outflow than that on an annual basis, which leaves us at a 15% and change increase in salary expenses
Yes.
going forward. Okay, now is that salary or is that total compensation? That's salary.
Salary.
So it doesn't, so from a percentage basis, the cost of our benefit package, I think, is about 60%-ish.
Overall agency wide, yeah, I'd say between 50 and 60. It varies by department, but that's a good rough number.
Okay. So our total employee expense, if you will, salary plus benefits, that increased percentage would not be 15% and change. It would be slightly lower than that because the cost of the benefit package to the agency stays the same. That's not increasing as a result of what we're talking about right now.
So I would say there is an impact that you will not recognize day one, and that has to do with our unfunded
PERS.
liability. Yeah, it has to go through PERS. I am not an actuary and I'm not going to pretend to be one right now.
Okay.
I do know that there will be an impact. You will feel it on a 24-month lag because of the timing of CalPERS actuarial reports and those types of things. So we can continue to work to get our hands around that, but wages will be higher. The employer contribution will be a little lower for those classic employees, right? We're not paying that, but how that impacts the overall pool and CalPERS, I do not have that information.
So that's a good point. If our wages go up 17%, it's reasonable to assume our CalPERS expenses are gonna go up 17% less, classic employees picking up the employee share.
So I wouldn't agree with the
benefits.
17% though, only because I don't believe it's dollar for dollar because it's a longer time frame. But that's I'm out of accounting math and into actuary, so I'm gonna step back from that.
Yeah.
So what's the benefits gone up compared to the whole of the last 5 years?
I will phone a friend on that and see if maybe HR knows or anyone in the audience would know our benefit increase for the last 5 years.
Probably higher than COLA, right?
My gut would say yes, just based on medical increases and my knowledge of the industry.
Well, just-
There are, and this question has been asked in a few different settings, there are a few benefits directly related to your dollar ring, as I'm calling it, per hour at the agency. There's an SDI reimbursement that gets put into the HRA account. That would have an impact. Overall, looking at it agency-wide, maybe $15,000. It's pennies on the concept of what we're talking about. The other impact would be to leave payout. And it has the potential, we can only guesstimate for leave payout. Lots of things can happen between now and the end of the year, but it could increase those payout amounts by $20,000. So overall, increasing the benefits that are associated with this less than $50,000.
Yeah, so raising folks' salaries, there's a normal cost we pay towards pension, a percentage of salaries, so those go up directly proportional to the increase. The impact on our unfunded liability is a little trickier to understand, but clearly having higher salaries mean folks are gonna retire with higher final pay. That's gonna increase our UAL also. It's a trickier one to,
Agree. And we won't see it till that FY29 trouble time.
yeah. And
That's pretty standard.
you know, in your chart, you know, it kind of shows that the, you know, that call it a sliver
Mhm.
of increase in our operating costs with a potential salary adjustment are small compared to the magnitude of the capital costs that we're looking at.
There's, it shows the slice right there.
They're kind of two different animals, though, you know.
Sure.
You know, it's the capital costs that are really you know, have a bigger impact, but I don't think it should, you know, take away from decision-making
Agreed.
on salary adjustments. Those have long-term impacts, and again, we're trying to set the right salary. And again, the study, you know, gave us data, and you know, we had what's the board's objective to say, where do we belong on that data? You know, there's nothing written in stone that you could use those adjustments for cost of living, cost of labor. Where do we want to sit in that spectrum of those comparator agencies? Should we be the highest paid employees in that group? Should we be the average, the median, the 75th percentile? It's all over the place. It's really, you know, that's kind of the board's decision and, you know, the direction we provided as we looked at the data. You know, historically, we've said, you know, the staff, we want them to be paid at the 75th percentile. You guys are doing an amazing job. It's important you paid there. We changed our comparators to this group of, you know, primarily Bay Area driven companies, saw, you know, how much more they're getting paid and said, well, you know, maybe we need to be the median there. And that's kind of the direction that we're looking at here is the median. You know, it's still being driven by the Bay Area companies. The median, I looked at the, you know, for each position, the spots, and it's the top half of the ones are the Monterey ones in the Silicon Valley and Delta Diablos, and so we're positioning ourselves in that area. You know, the decisions we make here don't just affect TTSA, also we're now aligning ourselves very much with the Bay Area. The rest of I talked about all the public agencies up here do salary surveys, and we're often part of that. And now other agencies are gonna look, and maybe they're still saying, hey, we wanna be the 75th percentile or something amongst the local areas. So they're comparing us to TTSA, who's now really compared to the Bay Area. And so it's this compounding system where I kind of said it's a challenge to figure out, really the objective is to find out a salary and benefit plan that can attract good employees and keep good employees here. And these numbers sometimes take over. And we're down the path. I think it's time for an adjustment. I think clearly some positions that seem to be out of whack, and I want to move forward with this. I did have a question on one of the handouts. There was Rochelle or whoever's in charge of this. It's page 413 of the whole packet. The proposed salary plan that has some yellow highlighting in it.
Yeah, good question.
Can we bring that up?
Spreadsheet.
Yes, that's what it's called. Yes.
So while we're waiting for that,
Sure.
in your opinion,
Okay.
looking forward, the next rate increase,
Mhm.
it's going to be substantively higher than 30%. Is that a fair statement, or do you believe it's going to be inadequate?
I don't know if I have enough information to give a concrete opinion. I think that we could get at it with a few years of back-to-back double-digit increases. Does that mean 30% increases? I don't know, I have to look at the rate one.
Not 3/3, okay.
Right, but I would have a hard time supporting a rate model that said, why we have to increase rates 60% this year and then we go to 40% to 20%. I would want, my inner smoothingness would wanna blend that out a little bit more. And those are some of the conversations we'll start having with our rate analysts. Now that we're getting all of the pieces to the puzzle.
The last board meeting, that rate model indicated just to fund the capital projects, and there's a lot of assumptions.
Mhm.
We're gonna have to go back out through another 218 process, raise our user fees by, instead of going up that 3% in year 4 and 3% in year 5, the 25 and a 15 in years 4 and 5.
Yeah, it was 100%
And that was
increase
that
over
was
5 years.
approximately 100% increase over 5 years, and that didn't include a 17% increase in salaries. I know that,
There is a version that had that I have in my draft folder
Right.
because I did look at
and
it.
again, because of the magnitude of the capital projects, the 1.2 million plus a little bit more because of salary related benefit costs doesn't tweak it a whole lot.
Correct.
It's when you're talking about $300 million and
It doesn't drive a peak on the mountain in the chart. Those are your capital projects. Agreed.
So I was looking at this table here where you guys kind of show what the various positions are currently paid, how they differ from the median, what the market median would be, so the proposed salary range, and then a proposed monthly salary and what the actual differences are. And I don't know that, first of all, there's these yellow highlights, and I don't know that it's called out why some of them are yellow, what those yellow
As mentioned in my-
represent.
As mentioned in the GM report, the highlights are the areas that I'm recommending something different than Gallagher's recommending.
And so, for instance, under Liz's CFO position, her current salary is highlighted. What does that mean?
You want to take it?
Go for it.
Since I highlighted it, thank goodness it's not pink. When the class and comp study began, the position wasn't a CFO risk manager position, it was a finance and administrative manager position, so the salary was lower. I wanted to make sure that the band that was associated with the CFO position was put into that box so that you could see the appropriate increase.
So when it says current maximum salary of 17, is that what your position is?
That is the top step monthly salary for the CFO risk manager position. And prior, if you look back, I believe it is Appendix 4 in the main report for Vicky's item. That was the original salary chart from Gallagher. It has step 6 for the finance and administrative manager, which was slightly less.
So didn't we, when we created that new CFO position, didn't we like figure out what the appropriate, we didn't do a full-born comp study, but what it's showing is, you know, I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. But we successfully recruited for your position, got you here.
Yeah.
You're a great asset to the organization.
Thank you.
It's awesome to have you here. But you took a job, with a salary at 17K within, months of being hired. We're saying that really should be, boosted $3,000 to $20,000 a month.
Mhm.
And so I don't know, with folks that have been here for a while and had other ones, it seems challenging. Another question I have is, what is this operations manager / chief plant operator, in parentheses, new, it's not on the org chart.
Yeah,
And we currently have an operations manager and a chief plant operator, but now there's the TBD there, but there is a proposed maximum salary. I don't quite understand that.
yeah, when we started the process of doing the classic comp at that time, the current operations manager had indicated he would be retiring. So we took the opportunity to have Gallagher merge the two positions together, because that had been the direction that I would have gone had Michael retired. So
So we're gonna add that position to our list of titles, and in the future, there's not gonna be a separate operations manager and a chief plant operator. There's gonna be
one or the other.
yeah, if I were to still be the GM at that point in time, that would be the direction I would say. Depending on what the new GM's direction is, that could change.
And then I saw that, the median salary for the positions, mathematical formula came here. We ended up creating this kind of salary range chart that we're trying to fit the positions into, in that if the projected salary increase for a position fell somewhere between those 2.5 steps, we rounded up. So it's the median, but then in some cases, it's close to 2.5% additional pay. Some of them, if that median ended up being just a snick underneath that 2.5, it could be a 0.1 or even no additional rounding up. Is that the kind of process by selecting the proposed salaries in this chart? Is to get them onto
Because that was Gallagher's work.
That is correct. So during one of our observation meetings, one of the staff members pointed out that the initial data from Gallagher showed numbers that were rounded to the closest salary range, meaning it could have been up or down. And the staff pointed out that the board had chosen to have the median for all staff members. Therefore, we went back to Gallagher. We asked them about that. They told us they did round to the nearest, whether it was up or down, and then they rounded up in all cases, or in nearly all cases.
So behind the scenes, because we're being asked to adopt a salary schedule, but it doesn't reference anywhere on there these
A matrix.
step ranges.
Yes.
But behind scenes, there is this system of 2.5% step.
Correct.
They're not steps, are kind of across, and I don't know what, I guess, ranges going up from, looks like a range 9 all the way up to 65.
Correct. In the background, there is a matrix and it starts at salary level 0 or range 0 and goes through 100. And within that matrix, Gallagher has identified where each position should be. Those within the matrix also, it identifies range numbers, again, 0 through 100. So yeah, in some of these cases on the same spreadsheet, you'll see the proposed salary range and it has a number assigned to it. For example, the general manager at the top of this sheet we're looking at has a proposed salary range of 65.
Right.
So on that matrix, it's identified that the salary would be associated with that range. The recommended salary would be associated with that range.
And then for the non-benchmark positions, and in some cases, even benchmark positions, there's been some adjustments for internal alignments, having certain positions aligned in series is where, you know, the operators 1, 2, 3, a certain difference between a 1 and a 2, a 2 and a 3, and the
Yes.
3 and the supervisor, and so on and so.
And those recommendations were all made by Gallagher.
Thanks.
Just want to get a clarification on so there's, I think, Richard, what I'm seeing is the recommendation for, and I'm looking at the management positions.
Mhm.
So there's chief financial officer, maintenance department manager, operations department manager, technical services department manager. So is the recommendation is that those would all have the same pay range?
The recommendation would be the CFO, the tech services manager be on the same pay range, which is a scale of 54.
And then
And the ops manager and maintenance manager would be at 51.
so this table doesn't show what the
And that'd be 60.
table we're looking at here doesn't show the
Yeah,
ranges
it'd be-
for grade 51.
It'd be about a 16% increase over the current.
On exhibit B, Dan, is the proposed salary ranges. I understand what you're saying, but it does, show that on the salary schedule. Exhibit B.
Right. So I guess what's the thinking from a parity standpoint in terms of those management positions not being paid the same?
Targeted 16%, to maintain the spread between the managers and the GM. The reason behind that, if you recall, the tech services manager was a reclassification of the engineering manager. That position was at a higher salary range than the ops manager and maintenance manager. When the incumbent retired and we retitled it, I lowered the pay scale down with the intent of it being worked out in the class and comp to set the appropriate pay scale. It's my belief that the CFO and the tech services manager, due to the staff they oversee, the professional staff they oversee, and the responsibilities, it warrants more than the ops and maintenance manager.
Okay.
Scott, you still there?
Dale's here.
I see that he's here.
Dale, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'm just taking it all in. Thanks for asking, Blake.
And do we have Scott back?
We just need to get So.
Yeah, the questions being asked are pretty much aligned with what I was thinking, so I appreciate that. I'm just trying not to sniffle on the,
Okay. And really, in the staff report, Richard, you lay out, your recommended option one, which is to adopt the salary schedule, along the lines of the sheet we just looked at, and along with a number of other kind of organizational changes and a change in the COLA. And really, the only difference with the option two that you're also provided us as an option, and of course, we're not limited to just that, is to effectively adopt it, but do it in a two-step process whereby, 50% of the recommended adjustments would be done in year one, and then year two, there'd be an agreement that the remaining 50% would go forward.
That's correct.
And so that just spreads the,
Yeah, I mean, historically, what I've seen in these kind of situations, when you have to be catch up, you do it over a period of years.
right, and so,
Yeah, I've also seen where you can adjust the salary ranges, but not the immediate salary, and then basically employees get more upside potential.
So you don't red circle them for the next 10 years.
Right, but then it may take a few years for them to
right,
gain the benefit of that, higher ups at a top end salary.
yeah, and, that has advantage of reducing the immediate impact, but take somebody who's, reached the journey level, topped out scale, and effectively saying, you're now,
You get more opportunity for
you
raises.
have more opportunity, but you're now a step two as opposed to a step six, and so,
If I could interject, I did take a look at that and see what the cost difference was. If we did something where employees would bump to the next step in the series, that would give them at least 5%. It only impacted about half, and it only decreased the initial implementation by about $200,000 to $300,000. It wasn't as big of a, oh wow, we should think about this, because it could be cost savings or spread it out a little bit more. It didn't jump out that way based on the numbers. Most people are at the top step, and based on the change, they would go to step 5 or step 6.
So most people are already at the max.
There are more people at a higher step than are lower steps.
That's not good.
any other questions? So the salary schedule is obviously the big ticket bullet on there. I don't know whether there was any other questions regarding some of the organizational changes, or, I am, I guess, a little curious about the thinking behind the change in the COLA process. What was the impetus from staff on, abandoning the previous formula and going to a 4%?
I think some of it is the belief that we've gotten behind because of the different amounts for the COLA. I personally don't think that's why we've gotten behind. This method does line us up. I've talked to some of our other member districts. This lines us up with the way they deal with COLA as well. Other than that, I don't know what the impetus is. I had a staff meeting, asked staff, and this was a request that came forward from that.
But the reality is you're taking off, you're putting in a cap, that's gotta come back to the board. That's correct. And then you moved it one point. That's it. Yeah, I think that's a good move.
I'm not hearing any other board comments. I don't know anybody from staff.
Or we vote
I don't
on
have any questions
option
yet.
1 or option 2.
Well, somebody's gonna need to make a motion,
Okay.
that we would then, take a vote on. But before we go there, Dan, did you have a question there,
I
or?
don't have any more questions.
Okay.
But I may have more comments once we get to deliberation, but.
Are you okay with opening it up to public comment at this point? I'm not sure if the folks from the observation committee or anybody else. You guys are Just waiting to see what happens.
Make a comment.
Sure, welcome there.
I was part of the Jeff Navarrete, part of the observation committee. Like to bring out as well, I want to talk about is the last comp study we did. Many of the positions we have here were Y rated quite considerably. So if you took the cost of livings that they've not gotten in the last few years, I think the rough math I did is around 14.9% that they've not gotten since 2020. So trying to catch back up, it's like we've already saved the money somewhat. Now we've got fair comparables. If you look at the last compensation and where the actual positions are compared to, many of the ones that were Y rated didn't have good information, so it kind of made up the numbers. So now we have good information with positions. We're like, wow, we shouldn't have been this far down. So just think about that.
Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Do we want to entertain a motion, or Dan, did you want
We done with public comment?
that's seems to be done with public comment, yeah.
Okay. Couple thoughts. As you mentioned earlier, Blake, you can get consumed by the numbers if you're not careful. So there's really kind of two lines of thought for me. One is the updated salary ranges, and second is implementation, which I try to think of independent of one another. I think in general, I'm supportive of the updated salary ranges. The only question in my mind is actually some of those management positions and the alignment there. And it kind of gears off of some of your questions, Blake, where it looks like the consultant recommendation was for those top management positions to be similar pay scale. It doesn't necessarily mean you, in my opinion, that you take the position that would be the highest and bring all the others up to it. You potentially would do more of an average type approach there. So I'd be curious if what other board members' thoughts are on that. Understand Richard's recommendation on, the maintenance and ops managers actually being at a lower number. I also, from experience, know that there's a lot that goes on with supervising and managing, line level and field operations. So, and in some ways that can bring different challenges than managing professional staff. So whether that, I'm not sure that it's intuitive to me that those positions should be at a lower classification than CFO position and the technical services position. And whether or not, the CFO and the technical services position should be more like a 53 or a 52, and then those other positions being, everyone's still getting raises in that scenario, right? So that's one question in my mind, and I was curious what other board members thought about that. And then the other question has more to do with implementation, which is, does everyone who's at the current top of the salary range automatically go to the top of the new salary range? Or does the salary range move? Maybe there's some movement where if salary range moves and you used to be at a grade 7, now you'd be at a grade 2, and you take people up to like a grade 3 so that they get some immediate benefit, but then you need to be here a few years to gain the full value of that salary increase and getting back up to the top of range. So those are the two topics I'd be curious as to hearing input from other board members on. My initial thought was not that once we bump the salary ranges up, that everyone automatically goes to the same position they're at in the salary range. I shared that with staff in the one-on-one meetings we had. And that there'd be some that there be some immediate increase for folks whose salary ranges go up, maybe they get an immediate increase, but not the full, whatever the percentage is at the top of range goes up. So those were, I'd be curious to hear other board members' opinions on that though, because I'm not terribly dug in on any single approach, but that's kind of where my thinking was.
Yeah, so those are good points. I'm assuming the salary maximum increases the COLA every year, is that correct? If you,
Say that again?
the salary maximum increases based on the COLA amount every year.
Oh, yes.
The whole wage scale goes up
I
by,
want to make sure.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Some
entire
places don't
range.
do it that way.
Yeah, the entire range.
Yeah, okay,
adjusts
so-
on that.
Yeah, I think there's a catch-up situation here based on the data that the board asked for. And I think pay for performance always should allow to have a raise that may be different than the market or whatever, right? And then that should allow the management team to make the decision. Does everybody go up to the max right away, or do you phase it in, or do you look at departments and then you stack rank everybody and then you do it that way? I mean, there's a lot of options there, so I don't know what the comp philosophy is on all that. So I think those are good points. For me, I mean, I look at the whole package, right? We've got great PTO, we've got great benefits. I think we're at the top of the stack on PTO almost from what I saw. And we have a lot of other things that are benefits here that we may not have taken into account when we just go through and look at crunch numbers. But that's, where we're at. And then I think the other piece I would say is the board made decisions before I got here around, the comps and all that stuff that I can't argue with, even though I don't necessarily agree that that might have been the right method. Which I think also explains why we're behind. We're now comping something different, which makes sense. And I think with a low turnover rate, we have some latitude, but not a ton. And I'm not saying that that's the philosophy we ought to have, but I'm willing to punt it down the road to the next time we do this and then really, get under the hood. But when I met with the team, and I said, hey, I've seen these kind of increases going over 3 to 5 years, not, right away. But I also have a problem with when you get to the maximum and you've red circled 90% of the staff, then where the hell do you go from here, right? That's another problem. And that could end up 5 years from now still being an issue, which frankly, if that's where we're limiting growth and we're just paying everybody at the maximum, we don't even have to have a discussion at that point, right?
When you say red circle, I mean, that's where you're kind of hitting out.
You're capped out, you're done. Yeah, yep. Inflation, have a nice day, see you later, right? Retire with your pension, have a good time. Yeah. And then I'd say the last thing for me is this is definitely going to put pressure on the agencies up here. I can tell you where I live, it's a very small water district. We're nowhere near on the staffing side. I mean, we're like at half what these numbers are. Granted, we're using a lot of younger people, and it's 3, 4 people. It's not a lot, but it's going to put some upward pressure on those. And we just did a comp study and took them up to 25%. And they're still going to be way behind. So, I mean, I worry about Tahoe City and other places that are going to fall behind real quick. But hey, we got to pay for the housing, so I get it.
Scott, thoughts on Dan's comments? Anything else on the?
I'm ready to move on.
Of course you are. We're not patience.
Hey, Scott, you're still muted.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. There's been a lot of due diligence over the course of the last 12, 14 months. The one thing that I do struggle with is if somebody's at the top of their class now, moving into the top of the class in the next step or into the new comp. And to the point, if you move them into the top of where are they until the next one? So I think there's a challenge on that. But I think that overall, we've done about as good as we possibly can with this project. And I would be happy with the numbers that are proposed.
So Scott, you're supportive of the salary ranges as proposed?
Yeah, and the implementation, Dan, you brought up a great point, you know, how do we phase that in? And I think that somehow phasing it in is the correct road to take. But I would
Well,
refer to
we're being asked, Scott, the recommendation has no phase in. It's an adoption of the revised salary schedule with a step-for-step match. So if that's something that, we're serious about, we need to make a decision on that, or adopt it as is. As Bert said, a few years down the road, there'll be another opportunity to look at the study again. It gets complicated, I think, with some of the positions. If you start, I struggle with, I struggle a little bit with the magnitude of the increase, given sort of the financial situation, and I think this, what I see is a staff that we don't struggle mightily with recruiting and retaining. But this is what we asked for. This is what it's showing, and if we deviate from it, it starts to feel a little bit even more arbitrary and capricious. Who are we, how are we setting that? And, we've got this, a little bit of a quid pro quo with the classic employees giving up their 8%. And if they start to get in the mix with a phased approach and how we address that. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, it's really important what you guys do. Want to pay you properly. This is, it's not science. It's not like this is it. It's the numbers that they've given. We've made some decisions. I think it's great for the agency. I think it's should really help us continue to recruit and retain quality employees. There's stuff in the study, I think, that didn't come up that, regarding particularly retiree health, which I think, young employees don't really care about, but anybody who's getting close to it realizes, especially in this day and age with the cost of health insurance, what a benefit that is. That doesn't get factored in. I looked at the comparator agencies. I think there's one other agency out of all of them that does something similar to us. The rest of them really provide de minimis retiree health, if any. And so we've got a great compensation, going to get even better, great benefits. I mentioned earlier, my biggest concern would be that, if you make it too good, if you get employees that just aren't happy here, whatever, don't like the culture of the organization, they don't leave, which is a really bad thing to do. If you overcompensate so much that folks that aren't actually happy, they stay because they can't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so there's a negative part of that. I hope that we don't have folks like that. But I think it's time we've started this process in 2023. I was worried when I first saw the numbers that, we had to go out for a rate increase immediately. It's not the case. Yeah, this is eventually, these salary increases are going to be paid by our customers. We're going to have to go back out to them. We have to justify it. But it's part of a much bigger picture. And hopefully our ratepayers understand the value of what we do. That's should be part of our mission is to convey that to the public, how important it is to keep the Truckee River clean, and what a good job you guys do. And, you know, this is a plant that meets effluent criteria that, you know, probably exceed all of the comparator agencies. The level of, you know, treatment that we have to do is higher than that. So
Right, so in the staff report, there's two options that were presented to us. Option one is to effectively approve the new salary ranges and to move everyone immediately to the same location, grade order in the salary range as they're currently located. Option two is to basically provide, it's similar to that, but it's basically provide half of that initial pay increase this year and the other half next year. I think my preference would have been to have seen that even more graduated over time. With that said, we kind of got two options. We can either approve one of the two recommendations from staff now, or we can ask staff to go back and fuss around more with the implementation component of this, to have it more graduated over time. Or, you know, which I think, you know, we're not going to do that sitting on the dais today. That would be providing direction to staff to bring this back to us at the next meeting. So I guess the question I'd throw out to the other board members is, do we just want to pick, I heard Bert, myself, and I heard Scott indicating, you know, 100% of the pay adjustment on day one or year one seemed maybe greater than what we would have expected. So, I mean, we could either go with option two, which is kind of, it's adjusting the salary ranges now, providing half of the immediate money this, you know, immediately, then the other half a year later. Or we could ask staff to go back and spend more time on this so that implementation is more graduated over time. So I think with that said, I could just, in the interest of moving on, I could be supportive of option two. And
Yeah, I have a question on option two. How do you guys plan on doing the medical part? The recapture on the medical? That'd be half of it.
the PERS, CalPERS Classic, yeah, it'd be half.
Over 2 years, okay. Got it. So there's no penalty up front where you gotta suck in the whole amount?
No,
Okay, got it.
no, we just have to do a new contract with PERS, stipulating the percentage.
So the $1.2 million salary, not including some additional salary related benefits, would be cut in half roughly. It'd be 600,000 this year, up to the 1.2 or whatever it would be next year. So we're talking about a you know, operating savings.
it's less a money thing for me, and it's more, you know, we're making a conscious decision to give folks additional upside potential. So do we award that all immediately, or do we provide the upside potential? But effectively, longevity is what gets you to that upside potential, as opposed to sticking around one more year, right? To get that full amount. So that it's less about the hard dollars and more, I think providing more upside potential. But then the ability to gain the benefit of that is by longevity with the organization. I think there's other value to that, which is why I'm more supportive of that approach. But again, with that said, I think if we want to do that, we would need to have a majority of the board provide direction to staff to do something that's more graduated, or we can move on and just approve option two. I probably would not support option one if someone made a motion for option one. I think in the interest of moving on, I would support option two. So that's where I'm at.
I'm in the same camp.
And you guys,
I'm on board with that too.
you guys provided a resolution, but that was based on option one.
Yeah, we just redraft the resolution to reflect option 2.
Okay. Are there any other complications? You know, we haven't made a motion yet, but just in the sake of discussion with option 2, this implementation.
I'm looking at Liz, I know she ran the numbers to look specifically at some of the Y-rated individuals. I believe option 2 still worked out.
As long as we cut the contribution in half as well, you can't have the 8% take back and
Yeah.
only give half of the increase, or employees will lose money out of their
That,
pocket.
that's fair.
Okay.
Totally agree with that.
But the moving in the salary range is what solves the Y rating for the most part, doesn't it?
Correct.
Right. Folks that are Y rated by the salary range is moving, they're no longer Y rated.
Correct.
So with all that said, I would make a motion to approve the staff recommendation, but with modification that we use option 2 for implementation as opposed to option 1.
I second the motion.
A motion and a second, additional board discussion. So when we just get caught up in the mechanics of this, just, you know, we've got these defined salary ranges are not going to go to that number spot. They're going to go to something below that. You guys can work that all out, right? And then we're guaranteeing or making the resolution will make some sort of statement about in year 2 up to this other thing, but then there's going to be I guess to a range that will be adjusted by potentially a COLA as well in there. Just trying to make sure, I mean, we're going to be.
I would have thought we approved all of the ranges now, just
Oh,
get
no.
paid in over 2 years. Right. I think we're making this too complicated.
Yeah, all right, from my perspective, we should be approving the new ranges now, so the new ranges go into effect year 1. But then the implementation in terms of how people's pay gets adjusted immediately. They don't, if they're currently top of range, they don't automatically go to top of range. They go halfway the distance between what the new money would be between where they're at now and top of range.
I have a question at this juncture.
And if we
My
get
brain is
some
processing the tabs on the
Right.
spreadsheet right now.
What's that?
My brain is processing the tabs on the spreadsheet right now. So with a 2-year implementation, to get the impact, I divided everything by 2. So you're saying the board in this action is supportive of the salary schedule, but we're not gonna put people in those ranges. We're gonna put them halfway in between. Like,
That's what I'm suggesting. Yeah.
because so you're at top step.
All the thing for Y-rated employees.
Right, and just moving them down a step, that doesn't solve, that doesn't give us the half and half, right? So if the increase is supposed to be $10, it will get increased by $5. So the actual hourly wage that the employee will see on their paycheck will not tie to the approved salary schedule. It'll be halfway in between.
We're gonna have a different salary schedule with a, you know, need to either define the salary schedule for next year or, you know, come back a year from now with.
I don't see it that way because we're salary schedule, you know, if we approve the new ranges. The new ranges are the new ranges. So the next time we advertise, you know, for a new position, the pay range is, you know, what is coming out of the study that we could be approving. It's the raises it's the second step, which is the raises we're granting employees, existing employees right now is what's different.
So you wanna adopt the salary schedule, but again, we're going back to place people at steps that would put them at a percentage increase that's half of that recommended, probably rounded up to the step above that. And so, and then not a salary schedule that has a net effect of whatever, half of 17% is 8.5%. And then a whole new salary schedule next year that takes all those same positions and boosts the entire. So we're sort of, and then the thing is that someone's.
Yeah, I mean, we could adopt a new salary schedule and not give everyone raises if we chose to.
I mean, what's the easiest thing to do, Liz? Maybe that's.
Well, option 1 was the easiest one.
Well,
I bypassed that one so far in the conversation.
Besides that.
So here's where my head is stuck, and it might just be that I have a lot of data in my head. I hear you, it's half. So let's use CFO as an example, since we've already talked about that salary. The increase is like 16.7%. So a new salary schedule that said step 6 times 16.9% was made to make the new salary schedule. So now in option 2, the CFO would get an 8% increase. There is not a step on the salary schedule that you're about to approve that coincides with that number. Right? I'm at step 6 now, I would go to step 6. Step 5 doesn't get there. So it will be an amount that is not printed on the salary schedule. I'm not trying to cause heartburn about that. I'm trying to make sure I understand what you all are saying so that I do the spreadsheet correctly. But I'm not in an actual step. That's what I'm saying.
I get it.
Okay, so I just want to make that point clear.
Like the key is making the money work, not the steps.
Okay.
And it's guaranteed at the end of 2 years.
To get to that salary schedule. I'm gonna look at payroll and see how much heartburn that causes payroll. I mean, it's a conversation we've had about a 2-year implementation, but not looking at it as adopting this salary schedule and only getting halfway there.
Yeah, I figured we were adopting a salary schedule that was halfway there.
Okay.
And
Could
then
do that too.
we'd
That's
adopt
easier.
a revised schedule, so people would still stay at the top step.
Yeah.
They would just be at the
So like
top step
one-
that went up half of,
1A and 1A1.
you know.
Trying to stay away from
Whatever's easiest to implement in my mind, as long as we get to the accomplishment.
But there may be a PERS under this with a, published salary schedule, so we may need to do a new salary schedule.
Right.
For 50% is, and then a new one next year.
Right.
When it implements, or do a min-max, because I think if you have designated steps in your pay scale, we'd have to confirm with PERS.
Yeah, but PERS is based on how much you're actually paying individuals. It's not tied to a salary range.
It has to be.
But it's based on a printed salary schedule.
If you're approving this one, then you would create the second one that's 50% of this one.
All right, so kind of, there is we haven't had a formal motion, I don't believe. We did make a motion. It's got seconded. We were having some discussion about how it would be implemented. Open it up to public comment again on the motion on the table. I see the philosophy, Dan, that I'm not hearing any public comment. I'm just gonna say, I'm probably not gonna be here next year and don't really wanna put this on somebody else. I'd just rather bite the bullet and adopt it and move forward. But you've got a motion, second, no additional public comment, we do roll call.
So we're doing a motion to accept option 2.
No, we have a motion for adoption of option 2, which is a 2-step process.
Basically to adopt the staff recommendation as it relates to the class and comp study with all items related to salary ranges, but that with the implementation that we would, in terms of immediate pay modifications, we'd be implementing option 2.
Option 2, and it was motion by Director Wilkins, second by Director Wilson.
Yep.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
and Director Justin.
I'm gonna say no. I was in favor of option 1, that the motion passes. Okay. Thank you, staff, for all your help. We're ready. Anybody need a break?
You said a drink.
What's that?
You said a drink, right?
A drink, a break. Okay. Hearing none, we're gonna move on to item 3, which is resolution 425, amending the employer paid member contribution. I think this was, go ahead, I'll let staff.
Yeah, Vicky will take it, but this enables us to negotiate or put a new contract in place with PERS we'll have to modify the resolution based on, action taken previously, but, we need it, first need the resolution before we draft them.
Okay, reducing the EPMC employer paid member contribution by 50% or to 4%.
Correct, yes.
Okay, anything else? Matt?
Yeah, and can we, with this action, can we basically reduce it 4% this year and then do it 0 next year?
We'll have to do a new contract next year, so we'll have to do a resolution next year.
Okay.
Okay. Vicky, anything else you want to add to that?
I just didn't know if you still wanted me to provide data that I was generally going to provide. It sounds like we have an understanding that classic employees hired at TTSA prior to 2021, April of 2021, their employee portion of CalPERS is paid by the employer. So we were proposing to have that 8% paid by employees if option 1 was chosen. Option 2 was chosen, so now we're asking to have 4% of that 8% of the employee portion paid by the employee. And then next year, I would imagine effective July 1st, 2026, because this one will be effective July 1st, 2025, that we would have that additional 4% next year effective on that date.
That resolution, you can't state.
I reached out to
Both of those just to minimize your work and to avoid, this is what this board wants, and we could be change on the board between now and then. I hate to see as much as possible that we can codify the decisions we're making that have an impact next year, that those get.
So I understand there's a need for 2 separate first contracts, but action today, good.
It's gonna be with PERS to accept this resolution, if they gave it to them again next year.
I did inquire at the CalPERS conference this past year related to that exact question. And my understanding was that you had to do it in 2 separate contracts.
Okay.
However, I am happy to give CalPERS a call again right now just to solidify that.
Yeah, if we can have a resolution state that 4% this year, an additional 4% next year, that should give you the ability to move forward with the contract, and
Okay.
the board has adopted that.
Based on the feedback, we'll amend the resolution. If we do that, we'll draft it that way and get signatures on.
Okay. I will entertain a motion for adoption of resolution 4, 2025 as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Cox,
Second, do you have enough clarity as to what that
I
amendment
do,
is?
yes,
Okay.
I do.
okay, motion in a second.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilson. You're muted.
Yes, I apologize.
That's okay. Director Clements,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
and Director Chesson.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, thank you, Vicky.
Welcome.
Item 4, updates direction on the GM recruitment. You're up.
May I continue to be here? Okay. Director Wilson and Director Clement are both part of the ad hoc committee for the GM recruitment. And we have been working with the chosen contracted individual or company to help us with the recruitment, and that is CPS HR. We have met with them for their first round, or our first time we met with them. And I guess I will open this up right now. Director Wilson and Director Clement, did you want to give the board an update, or do you want me to do that?
If you could, Vicky, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, very good. So we met with CPS HR recently within the past few weeks. They provided us with a timeline for the GM recruitment, and that timeline includes creating a brochure. During this meeting today, I have sent the draft version of that brochure to Directors Clement and Director Wilson for their review. And they did want to inquire with the rest of the board whether the entire board wanted to review that brochure or whether just the 2 of them can review and approve that brochure. So that's one question to talk about in a minute, but we expected to have that brochure by the 21st of April. We have a draft version right now, the finalized version by April 21st. The job will be posted approximately April 25th. It will run for 4 to 5 weeks, and May 26th, CPS HR will do their first review of the applicants. They will do a telephone screening interviews. And then June 6th, the ad hoc meeting, or the ad hoc group, as well as myself, will meet with CPS HR and go over that first round of screenings, during which they'll make recommendations to us on who we should interview for a second interview, but we will have the entire list of applicants at that time. We currently have tentative dates scheduled for June 16th and 17th to perform the first round of interviews for the general manager position. And we do already have a panel set. Director Clement and Director Wilson both had outside individuals that they wanted to serve on that panel. So we have essentially secured that. We haven't shared the dates yet that we plan on doing the interviews, but.
So I just want to understand more about that.
Sure.
So because ultimately the full, from my perspective, the full board needs to be involved in the interview process. So you're talking about an initial screening, if you will.
CPS HR will do an initial screening of applicants, and then they'll make a recommendation to the ad hoc group. That ad hoc group will do a first round of interviews, and at that point, I believe that the ad hoc group would seek additional assistance from the entire board. Meaning, do you want to be involved in a second interview, or do you want to take a recommendation that we want to make at this time? We haven't really gotten quite that far, Scott, but if you'd like to throw in any additional thoughts on that matter,
Yeah, I
feel
think we're
free.
still putting together what the panel would look like and who would interview and when, but I think all the board members should be part of it and involved. We've asked Joe over at Alpine to interview since he's run a membrane plant as well, and he's agreed to join us, and I think Scott has the GM over at Tahoe City.
Is that your way of keeping
North
Joe-
Tahoe.
Joe-
Yeah.
Well, no, I asked him if he would apply, he said he wouldn't.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, why would you, just a cush job you got?
Yeah, I was just kidding.
I heard it.
So I get a couple questions. So it sounds like the posting is gonna go out between now and the next board meeting. I guess checkpoints that I was kind of possibly anticipating seeing was one, was there any change in the job description? We've got a job description that we've historically had for Richard. Was there any discussion of that, or are we planning on keeping the job description exactly as it is now?
So that was additional information I was going to provide.
Okay.
Yes. So the job description has been reviewed by the ad hoc members as well as myself. And we also sent it to CPS HR for their review.
Okay,
They didn't have any additional comments, but
Okay.
the ad hoc group did add one additional bullet point to the position. And Bert and or Scott, do you guys recall right offhand, it was something to the effect of need to have financial
Membrane plant preferred, having
And-
experience to having done that, something like that.
and the financial knowledge. I believe there was something about the financial knowledge also. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me right now. I should. So
Okay.
there was a review. Does the entire board want to do an additional review prior to the posting?
no, I think that we need to move forward. I was just curious whether there was changes. I'm okay with delegating. We probably, as a board, adopted the GM job description, and historically, job descriptions, I think, are adopted by the board. In this case, we're making, it sounds like a fairly minor tweak to the job description, and yeah, it doesn't even sound like kind of that sounds almost more like a brochure type preferred quality, not a job description thing. It sounds like the job description perhaps is maybe staying the way it is and it doesn't need to formally come back to the board.
We did literally add one bullet point to the job description.
Okay,
And I can share that. I'll email that to the
Okay.
entire board after the meeting today.
okay,
And then, as far as the preferred, the MBA part, we did add that just to the brochure as a preferred item.
okay. And the brochure, I don't think really comes back to the board. I guess, part of the, proposals provided by CPS as well as the others had to do with, some level of a needs assessment. It's not a job description, but more the kind of soft skills or what you're really looking for. And, I doubt the time frame you've had that's taken place. I would have thought they would have reached out to us. I'm guessing that, in the name of expediency, we got the job description, a brochure that kind of parrots a lot of the job description stuff, and that perhaps this needs assessment will be an internal discussion that we have as we go into the interview process, and particularly in the evaluation of the candidates as to what, we're looking for on that.
So I apologize if I have misunderstood the role of the ad hoc and myself, but yes, we did meet with CPS HR.
Okay.
They did ask for the desired qualities of the ideal candidate, so they did create that profile or at least ask for those items related to the profile. I can and will have CPS HR reach out to the other 3 board members then, if that is the direction, in order to get everybody's desired quality.
They're just trying to take that to put it in the brochure, right?
Correct, and to look for those desired profile items when they're doing the screening. Certainly, yeah.
I mean, I think it's important, one, in attracting the right person. And 2, for hopefully the board and different board members may have different perspective on
Right.
what they think is important in the next GM, and that'll play out in the deliberation after the interviews, and potentially in the development of the interviews that we want to ask. But I was just curious. I'm glad to hear that there was that question asked and that you guys
Yeah,
helped develop that stuff. I was just curious where we were at on that.
we're trying to keep the net as broad as possible.
Yep.
And not exclude anything. That was the key, and I think they got the message and they kind of gave us the background,
Okay.
what they recruited recently and how that may fit. So, yeah.
Does the brochure hit on the fact that the agency is looking at, upwards of $300 million in capital improvements in the next 10 years? And,
In fairness, yeah, I literally just sent it to them during the board meeting
but
today.
the
Yeah.
direction that you would be giving them that we want to include, that it's not a plant that's kind of in stasis, and there's change afoot here. And some of the key kind of changes that are going on at the organization.
I am aware that those were part of the ideal candidate profile items that were discussed during the meeting. So definitely it was the fact that we were going to have a significant expansion here in the near future, and that we wanted someone that would be able to manage
You want
the
to,
aspects
GM
of
who's
that.
going to come in and understands there's an aggressive capital plan that's taking place and.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. I did want to mention also that during the meeting, they did ask if there was anywhere specific that we wanted to recruit. And basically, the way we left.
What we had in mind.
No, really, is there a specific place like, I don't know, CWEA job boards that you definitely want to recruit on that site? There wasn't anything specific I had. I just left it with wherever you generally recruit for a position like that. that's where we'd like you to recruit, but if there's any more specific, please let me know.
Be ASA, CSDA, CWEA. I don't know if WEF has a job site, that'd be the national part of CWEA. Brown and Caldwell's, Water News. Those would be ones that I would.
Okay, we also shared with them for the brochure, let's see, the benefits that TTSA provides, obviously the job description we already talked about, and photos for their brochure. And, let's see. Again, this question was posed earlier. Does the entire board want to review the brochure? I can send it to all of you.
I don't need to review the
Okay.
brochure.
Okay.
If other board members want to, then that's to be.
If you have time to send it out to me,
Okay.
I'd like to take a look at it, but I don't
Okay.
think that you don't hear anything back, you have the green light to move forward.
Okay.
As soon as there's a draft, I'd be curious to look at it,
Okay.
give some
So
feedback.
I will send the draft at least to you, and Scott, you already have it. Bert, you already have it.
Correct.
And Dale, did you want a copy of that also? I'll just send it to all of you, the draft version right now, and if you
Just give
choose
us
to.
till Friday to provide comments.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I don't want to slow the process down, but so it's more for our reference, not our even review.
yeah, let's see, there was the question about in the future, who you would like to have on the panel. Again, we have at least initially established a panel for the first round of interviews, but maybe you want to change that, or maybe you want to
So probably
designate.
add people.
So that's what I wanted to understand a little bit more is if you're thinking that you collect applications, you know, that the recruiting firm's gonna help us with, they'll do an initial screening. And then are they gonna try to screen down to a number or?
They may have said that, I don't.
Yeah, so the thought was they would screen initially, and then Scott and I would go through it with Vicky and see where we are, and then screen a little bit more probably.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to put more than five candidates in front of the board, if anything, you know, maybe three.
I agree.
And then the ad hoc, whoever wanted to be on the interview side, I think what Scott and I made clear to CPS was, hey, look, we're gonna have to have more people on this because we're not the technical guys on how to run a plant.
Right.
A membrane plant, so that's where we wanted to get outsiders to help us and folks inside the company that have that expertise. And then if you guys have other people you want to bring to that panel, you know, that's open discussion at this point, has not been set in stone.
Yeah,
And, you know, the
so
idea is.
you're thinking that's a panel that's in between the screening that the headhunting firm does and the final interviews by the
Yes.
board.
I
Okay,
think that's how we'd have to do it, otherwise we don't get the technical review process properly, in my opinion. That was our thought process on that.
Correct.
So you get whatever, 30 applicants, CPS is gonna give you, half of those actually are qualified, they make the minimum qualifications. Then there's gonna be, say, from those 15 qualified folks, you're gonna either have them come up here or do some sort of phone initial interview with CPS, by Vicky, the ad hoc committee, and you guys will maybe bring somebody else in also to narrow it down, hopefully from 15 to 5 that would come back for the full board interview.
And I think, guys,
Five rounds.
Bert and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they said that they would post our tentative dates for the interview on the brochure, and
Correct.
I might
Yeah.
need to state that again, because again, I haven't reviewed it myself either, but if it's not on there, and that's why we chose a couple of dates that could put that information on there so that an applicant would be prepared to be in Truckee
So that,
on those dates.
all I can say is that that's, that secondary screening from, qualified candidates down to ones that come to the full board for an interview could be a lot of work for you guys. I mean, I appreciate your willingness to do that and potentially, bringing in an outside person, because from my experience recently recruiting for the GM at TSD, we had, I think, on the order of 20 total applicants, narrowed down to, I think, 11 that were qualified. And we just had our HR person who was doing the role at CPS kind of phone screen those 11 to working with the ad hoc committee, but she did it herself to narrow it down to the 5 to set up an interview with multiple folks. And, because it could be a pretty big candidate pool of qualified candidates. And so I give you guys some flexibility on how you get from, the screen set down to the ones you want to bring to the interview, but
You might get that phone call.
well, I just, if it's, I just don't want you to have to, hopefully,
It may be a bit organic based on how many applications.
yeah.
I think that's the right answer.
So we're working typically with these interview processes, once you start an interview thing, Vicky and Josh can chime in, you want to be consistent in the questions you ask and the group that's reviewing it. And so it's not like you can have necessarily different folks engage, and it's nice to be consistent. So if it's a large pool, you may want to simplify the process so you don't want that to be the 2-hour, hour and a half interview. That should be, it should hopefully be 15 minutes or something like that, just to further screen them, and then we can have like more extensive review later.
Okay. And I think the last thing that I haven't mentioned yet that we really wanted the board to consider at some point is, again, Richard's last day of employment is in August, the beginning part of August, but he will be utilizing some leave time. So his last working day on site will be at the end of June. So certainly some consideration about whether the board would like to appoint an interim GM, if they would like someone to work out of class, whatever they would like to do, but certainly consider that information.
Yeah, and the committee's view there was we'll get to that bridge, we'll cross it.
Maybe you're getting there, Vicky, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Salary range, that's obviously something that's gonna attract or not attract candidates. So what did we?
It's one we just adopted.
This is what we approved, yeah. And that's what we told CPS it was probably gonna be based on today's meeting, and that's what we'll put in there. But the list of benefits that's in the brochure is pretty serious, yeah, including a car. I like that. Good stuff.
I actually did not include that in there,
I thought
but
that was in there.
no, that was
Somewhere.
not included
Are
in
you
there.
serious? I think
Simply
it's in
because
there.
I forgot, Director Clement. Thank you for reminding me.
I could have sworn it was in there, but I'll go back and look.
No car in there.
The car in there, okay, then I missed it.
So by adopting half the salary
You're right.
schedule, the posted amount is,
No, we adopted.
No, we adopted the whole schedule.
We adopted the new salary.
did we?
range. That's why I was very specific about that.
So I have a note during,
I was very specific about that.
I have a note during board comments to ask a clarifying question, because it is my understanding, and Vicky will correct me if I'm wrong, we have to have an accurate salary schedule to give to CalPERS. I can't give the salary schedule to CalPERS that is adopted and say we're only paying people halfway to this. That's what I was trying to articulate when I said, my example, I'm not gonna be at step 5, I'm gonna be in between
So-
step 5 and 6.
So let me jump in. So I work for an organization that has salary ranges and there's no steps. An employee can be anywhere within that salary range
Yes.
because it's pay for performance.
Yes, I've seen that on the website.
So I'm at a bit of a loss as to why if we tell CalPERS, we've got salary range, which is, here's the bottom, here's the top, here's where the person is within that salary range, why that creates a problem.
I agree.
I believe oh, go ahead,
Yeah, that's the key is you have like a min max
with
range,
steps.
not steps, where we currently have steps,
Yes.
so. We're gonna have to look
So
at,
maybe what we just did is
We just need to look at the
the
min.
max
Yeah.
and we're putting people somewhere in there and then next year we'll go back to steps if we need to do it that way.
Okay,
And if you need to come back to us with some kind of cleanup stuff. 'cause
that's where I had to
topic
know, like, what needs to come back next
at our
month, so.
May meeting.
I understand it a little bit better now, and we will figure out the required paperwork that needs to come back and get your approval on it.
So
But this was the reason I wanted to be, for recruitment is why I wanted those salary ranges to be clear that they're the higher ranges, so when we're
right,
out advertising for people, it's like, hey, here's here's your pay range.
Since we're talking about it, could I ask one more clarifying question? I'm very uncomfortable jumping in the middle of this item, but there was a comment early on in the class and conversation about the manager's rate of change, yet during the option conversation, nothing was added or changed, so no change to that.
right, no, we did not adopt.
I wanted to make sure,
No one else took me up on that, so that was not part of the motion.
just making sure I didn't miss that part.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the salary, stated salary for the position or range is the full
Yeah, just give
salary range as shown, kind of in
Yes.
option one, and how we deal with the fact that we're only adopting option two halfway there is a separate item, but that's okay, all right.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay,
it's approximately 244, 955 to 312, 631.
Okay.
Approximate salary.
And you never know, it might have to change depending on candidates.
and this is, I mean, it's a relevant question to ask in this topic. I mean, my agency deals with the general manager's salary differently. They don't adopt a range, they adopt a by contract amount, and that the contract is typically said that the GM will get the same COLA as the other employees, so it changes over time. But there's only one number on the range, and then when there's performance reviews, that manager's salary can adjust accordingly, as opposed to being on a fixed. Because the GM is a different character than the rest of the staff. They're hired by contract by the board. They're not a at-will employee like everybody else. And so,
I think it's done differently in different organizations.
and I kind of liked the way ESD did it. I mean, we just adopted a salary range and it included a GM range and steps and all that. And so it's kind of maybe a moot point because I should have brought that up at that point, but you know, would have been potentially relevant in the discussion for the salary range here, but
Posting a range is the right thing to do.
Okay.
For the brochure.
No, I-
So where we go with it after that, a contract or not, is a different discussion, I think.
okay, all right. I agree. Just letting the other board members who maybe not aware as much about how GMs sometimes are, the wages are dealt with, that there is another option. Okay.
Car allowances, deferred comp.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different benefits that can be different in a contract.
Yeah.
Negotiation.
So just as a
Right.
quick overview of what we just spoke about and to make sure that we're all on the same page, I will be sending the job description to the edited job description as it stands right now, including our additional bullet point to the entire board. The whole board would like to provide feedback on the desired candidate profile. The plant will be having a lot of growth and we want to make sure that that is reflected in the brochure. We talked about a lot of places to advertise. The draft brochure will go to all the board and I'll seek feedback by Friday of this week If I hear no comments, I'll assume that there are no comments.
Yeah, that would be my request for stuff you're requesting input from the full board on, is to give us a deadline.
Okay,
And
certainly.
if we don't meet that deadline, it means we have no comments.
Okay, that
So that
sounds
way, if I
good.
don't respond to you,
Okay,
I'm good, you're not
Yes.
trying to head us down.
all right. And that the.
One clarification
Uh-huh.
there. There's some hyperlinks that are buried into the brochure that are not live, that would send somebody to see what the construction plan is and what the other stuff's going on in the construction. But I do think we do need an incremental paragraph to discuss what you said about the 295 million and all that. So if you guys want to take a stab at that when you look at it, go for it. If not, Scott and I can get that in there pretty quickly, and then if the hyperlinks aren't there yet to understand all the detail that we're providing in the brochure.
I like that concept though.
Yeah.
Linking to it.
Okay. The board, the entire board may or may not want to be on the panel, but that is something that we will discuss as we get a little closer. And we'll figure out the right way to interview candidates along the way, whether that's an additional interview or not. But
Just clarification, I think the whole board is gonna need to be here for, the goal would be to have 5 or less candidates for the full board to interview. That
okay,
intermediate screening process to go from qualified applicants down
Okay.
to interview
Right.
for the full
Okay.
board.
Yeah.
I don't think that the whole board should be in on that. I think that's the ad hoc committee, and CPS should figure out how to go through that screening process, and we leave that up to you guys.
I agree.
okay. And then add agency vehicle to the list of benefits. I think that was everything that we discussed. Did I miss anything that I didn't mention just now?
No, that sounds good. I'm just looking at calendar stuff again. So you said hopefully posting the job the 25th of April
Correct.
and it being open for 5 weeks,
4 to 5 weeks.
4 to 5 weeks. So that means applications due by the 1st of June, roughly the first week in June. Then the screening process. So probably the screening process, maybe by the end of July, we're actually having the full board interviews somewhere in.
Yeah, we were tighter than that.
Even
Yeah, we
at
were
the
tighter than
end
that.
of June even,
Going into
maybe.
June, yeah.
So you can
Trying
get
to
from
through.
the receiving all the applicants and being ready to interview by the end of June. That makes sense, and possibly a special board meeting for that process in the end of June. Maybe making an offer
Yeah, just,
in July. So then hopefully them starting in the middle of, or the end of August, probably.
just a mechanical thing there. I'm out of the country from the 18th through July 7th.
Okay, that's good to know. You'll be a cleanup guy then at the end.
Not sure. we'll wait,
We
but
get lucky.
Yeah.
Look,
Through July 7th, you said?
Yeah.
July,
June
June
18th.
18th through July 7th.
Okay, and I'm also out of town the end of the last week in June, just if you're actually trying to tell them when these interview things might happen. I know that I've got something, just the 25th through the 27th of June.
Okay.
But other than that, I think those times should be around.
Okay.
Okay,
And just maybe a comment that I'll throw out for Scott and Bert as you're kind of working on when you're in that process of screening from down to the group, the folks that would be interviewed by the full board.
Mhm.
So just from my perspective, the MBR project is a big project. It's a heavy lift. Want to make sure we're not losing track of the importance of all the day-to-day personnel management, dealing with all their stuff that comes up with managing 50 employees. That in my opinion, is equally important, potentially more important.
Probably more important.
Yeah, if I were, from my perspective,
Hire consultants for the other stuff. I mean,
yeah, agreed. I think there's experts we could hire for the other stuff if we need it. It's
exactly.
And we've had recent experience here where we had some rough patches on the internal side and it wasn't easy, so,
Yeah, I've heard about those.
yeah.
So, Richard, when's your last day in the office again? Was it the end of June?
Yeah, some of my schedule's changed. I have 1 week in July that I will definitely be out. But I'll probably have some days in the office in July. So my actual last day is, August 10th, that's a Sunday.
Right.
I just haven't readjusted some time off that I'm gonna burn up between then. So I'll be here all of May, all of June, and then some of July.
We didn't know that, so my apologies for misstating.
It's as
Fluid.
Yeah.
It's very fluid.
Totally.
Yeah. Based on Mrs. Pilates.
That gets to the point of
How did you?
perhaps appointing interim GM. And we felt like we wanted to get your thoughts on that, the entire board.
It seems like we're gonna have a gap.
Here we are.
Yep.
And it seems like designating someone to be in charge during that gap would be a good idea.
Acting role.
I'm basically, a long way of saying, I think we should appoint an interim GM. And the question is, when should we do that? And
Right.
yeah, do we want to try to name that person in May, or do we want to try to name that person in June? What's that?
Right, May, I would think.
Probably May, so then it's clear as to who that person's going to be during the transition period. So do we, is Josh on the call?
Yeah, that I was just gonna ask, Josh.
Yes.
Is that an open session discussion, or can some of that happen in closed session? Discussion on appointment of an interim general manager.
It depends. Sorry to be, I'll give you the lawyer answer, but the general discussion of whether to and what the qualifications are would be an open session discussion. But if there's a particular candidate you want to discuss, that could be in closed session.
So I would suggest to the other board members, a board meeting, the closed session agenda item.
I agree.
On the board meeting to discuss appointment of an interim GM.
But you're not here in May, are you?
I'm not.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You guys need to do that.
Yeah. But
Yeah, no, I think it would be nice to get that lined up and
Good idea.
Thank you.
okay. Anything else on the GM recruitment?
That was all I had.
Okay, thanks, Vicky.
thanks for all your work.
Thank you very much.
Bert and Scott, great work. Yeah, that's exciting, moving forward. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, financials.
Let's talk about what happened in March. Wow, I just made it May. Look at time fly. So crazy.
Make a photocopy and present it in May. We're good.
Exactly like what I said in March, just copy that. So let's talk about our actuals as of March 31st. As of March 31st, 75% of our fiscal year has elapsed. Holy cow, let's just all take a second for that. Okay, let's move on. So being 75% elapsed, taking a look at this first chart that focuses on revenues for Fund 10 and Fund 2. Fund 10 is at 74%, trending right along. Fund two is about 71%, but I anticipate through anticipated connection charges, busy season is happening for connection charges as well as continued interest. We'll make our budgeted amount for revenues. Before I talk a little bit about expenditures, oops, we're getting all excited. Not everyone wants to touch it. I'll fight you. All right. Are there any questions about Fund 10 or Fund 2 revenues before I talk a little bit about expenditures? Stunned silence, let's move on. Fund 10 expenditures are about 69%, so slightly under trend overall. The category of supplies, repairs, and maintenance is the highest category under budget. I anticipate that ramping up in this last quarter, but I do not anticipate us getting to 100% when I looked at the projections related to that. For Fund 2, we are at 46% of the budget if you just look at the projects. However, there's also a debt piece that we pay out of that, and we've only made the interest payment. We'll be making that full principal payment as of June 30. So I anticipate staying on trend with that. And then for Fund 6, project-wise, we're only at 5.5%. We've had several conversations about the timing of digestion improvement, pushing that out. So when I come next month with a draft budget, we will talk about 5-year CIP. We will talk about FY26 actual expenditures as they relate to these funds. There is also a debt piece related that is paid out of Fund 6. And including that, it only takes us to 5.6. I don't anticipate us getting to 10% expense on the budget. Particular questions about any expenditure you saw in any of the funds before we talk about total cash real quick? Okay, things are still looking up. We are still trending in the right direction, and we can see the effects of our rate increase right here. The line for FY26 is higher than FY24 because of that increase. We have seen our first teeter payment with that increase on it, and we are waiting for the second two throughout the rest of the year. So for total cash, we're about $43.4 million. When I took a look at cash projections for the Finance Committee, I anticipate we're going to end the year pretty close to this. The cash that we bring in through the rest of the year will be cash that we spend. But I have projected between $40 and $44 million cash ending balance for the year. We'll see how good I do related to that. Questions about revenues, expenditures, or cash?
Nope.
All right, then that takes us to our recommended action to approve the financial results for this month. That's all I have.
So moved.
Got a second? Motion and a second, roll call?
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
and Director Tresson.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you, Liz. Fuel sewer service charges for APN 85-24107.
So we were contacted by the property owner requesting a refund of fees paid because they claimed that they did not have sewer services. Working with Tahoe City, they did have a connection. So based on the agency rules and regulations, I denied their request because I didn't have the authority to issue a refund, because I can only issue a refund if it's a billing error. In this case, it wasn't a billing error because they actually had the service available. Should be noted, they have no water service available at the residence. It's actually like a very small cabin. Looking at it on Google Earth.
There actually isn't a structure there either.
Is it now gone? Is it now gone?
Okay.
So, and I know you probably, sitting on the board there, it's had some
Yes.
additional background.
So we dealt with this city PUD board, same thing. It was a customer who, like 40 years ago, requested a sewer stub out or connection for their house that was granted, or for a structure that was granted, but there was never a structure connected. So there was never actually any effluent discharged into the sewer pipe. They asked us for a 40 years worth of back sewer payments, and we denied that. I think we granted a couple of years worth, whatever whatever our ordinance allowed and not beyond that.
He's correct. It's 2 years and our rules and regs follow that same 2 year for building error.
Right.
So the amount that I'm recommending the board authorize me to be able to refund is the 2 years good faith refund that would finalize any claim. I worked with Josh to draft a letter, as Sean did, to state such.
Was the $1,400 that TCPUD refunded for 2 years and ours is like $1,090? That must have been into your water and your sewer
No.
charges, or do your sewer collection charges exceed the treatment charges at TTSA?
Yes.
Wow,
It's just
okay.
sewer. Because we don't put property tax into sewer collection like some agencies.
Okay, we have a motion to grant, the motion made to grant a 2-year refund of.
Yeah, authorize the GM to issue a 2 year refund in the amount of $1,099.50 to the property.
So moved. Great customer.
So moved?
Yep, we got a motion, a second, roll call.
And the motion was Clement and second was Wilkins.
He was first. Second, first, second.
Doesn't matter.
And I have roll call, Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
and Director Tresson.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, next item is amending contract to allow Rotary to install some benches on TTSA property near the Legacy Trails.
Correct. This dates back, the board approved the placement of 3 benches prior. When Rotary purchased the benches, they were able to get an additional bench and they've kindly requested to install that bench on agency property. Effectively known now as bench 5. So seeking authorization to sign the amendment to add that additional bench onto TTSA owned property.
So moved.
Great.
Second.
Comments, discussions, hearing none. Roll call.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Clement,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
and Director Tresson.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay. All right, thanks for you guys' patience. We're on to the department reports. Mike, you up first? Sure. I will go first.
Good morning, Board of Directors. Michael Peak, Operations Department Manager. The Operations Department report for March.
Still.
I'll just go into it. So all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. The plant performed well through the month. The thickening room cleanup and painting is ongoing. B&R backwash bead removal is ongoing. We had 0 completed work orders, 4 pending. Flows were pretty normal. One thing that did not get on here is we did one of our influent compliance numbers for BOD, which we run every month, did not meet quality control QC in the lab, so we were not able to report it, but it's just a reporting value. And we did note that in our WDR report when we sent it off to Lon. Any questions for the operations department?
Mike, it looks like the nitrogen effluent in the last couple of months has been higher than we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years. Just curious.
Yeah, so we looked into that because I know the question had come up before. We did run a little bit higher, a lower SRT this winter than we had in winters past. We tried to come into the spring and not generating a cardia growth, which generates the foaming in the digesters. By running that lower SRT, the activated sludge system, it elevates our CODs a little bit coming off that system, which is our measure of our effluent strength. And when that goes into BNR will only consume so much COD, and then so we had to use a little bit less methanol. So we had a little bit more bleed through of nitrogen because of that reduced methanol usage to maintain the lower COD on the plant effluent. So it would be kind of a, but if you look at well 31, we're still well below our average or our limit for the and when you look at the COD, that's a direct discharge on our effluent, or that's a direct report on our effluent, as is phosphorus. So those two constituents we have to control a little bit tighter because of the limited effluent, whereas the nitrogen limit, even though it's a little higher on the effluent, the limit is out at well 31 and we're below that limit. So, and we have no concern with going over that one.
Cool. Thanks, great answer.
Anything else?
Me. All right, thanks, Mike. Paul?
Good morning, directors. Still morning. All right. So for the month of March, we did continue offering support for digestion improvements project, the nutrient removal project, the SCADA server replacement project, which has pretty much wrapped up. There's only a few smaller items on that, but the migrations that we intended to do are mostly done. We continue on with the 811 CMMS integration project, which is also nearing completion. We're in the final stages of testing right now. So we're hoping to loop in some staff from TSD to do a demonstration at some point. Awesome. Yeah, that would be kind of a good thing. We're excited about the implementation. It didn't quite go as smoothly as hoped, but as these things sometimes do happen. The Civic Clerk software implementation project. This is the first board meeting that we're using the new CivicWare or Civic Plus software. So I know Rochelle has been pretty pleased with the output of that, and you'll see on the website as well too that there's it's much better organized, and we're pretty pleased with the final outcome. Network upgrade project continues on. For the month, we installed some bollards at the front of the plant to protect the main gate controls, the access controls that we did last year. We replaced one of the bigger Bond 10-inch mixing pumps for digester number 33. We replaced a high pressure pump for boiler 3. We continue on with the secondary ISP for backup. This month, we are proceeding with a contract so that we can get another pole installed. So that we have a backup connection to the internet, since we're using so many different cloud services and such. So that's been a long time coming. We attended a cybersecurity conference this last month, and work orders were relatively flat with regards to corrected NPM month over month. And you can see we've got some pictures. That is the breakdown of the digester 33 mixing pump. That's one of the bigger pumps over there. This is one of our staff members. He's well versed in machining, and he was making up some repair parts for another project. And that's all I've got for the maintenance department.
Paul, any questions? Okay.
All right, thank you. By the way, Director Cox, happy birthday.
Oh.
You catch that, Dennis?
Oh, wink.
The wing.
Oh, you're up. Jason, you're up. Sorry. Paul, you're on.
Good morning, Board of Directors. Jason Hayes, Technical Services Manager. So brief updates. The engineering department, digestion improvement project cruising right along. We are entering into the 30% design. We've got a couple of elements that we're waiting for on the basis of design verification, but we're kind of solidifying all the elements of the project. and moving on to kind of actually start knocking out some cut sheets and some paper. So lots of review is going to be involved with that. TRI, the improvements in the Olympic Valley area are moving along, lots of permitting. I believe we are now waiting on Army Corps of Engineers to give their final approval. That would be the last level of permitting. And then we are currently reviewing the 100% on the drawings. We're deadline for this week on that. So hopefully next week we'll be in a position we can kind of start scheduling advertisement for construction and get a little bit of ahead of it because there is pretty tight time frame here and getting someone on contract in time to start this in September. We are now going to be moving on to MBR facility design. We're not going to see nutrient removal project anymore. It's going to be more focused on this. So we're in the process of writing an RFP for this to advertise for all the final design. We're going to include some milestones in there that the board will be involved with, likely PDR prior to the 30%. But it's pretty exciting. And again, lots of input from the people we have in the agency. You guys got to know them as we were moving through this really strong team. All the supervisors, managers are just tremendous knowledge bases on this. So we're looking at an anticipated proposal period 2 to 3 months. Right now, I'm just saying 3 to be safe because other people watch these meetings. And we are beginning the process of outreach for any kind of potential consultants. We want to make sure, because this is going to be a very large proposal, we want to make sure they have plenty of time to look over the study and get kind of a grasp on what the proposal is going to look like before the RFP comes out. Bait transport study is effectively complete. Right now, we're just waiting for the compiled data, which was one of the requested deliverables from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We're going to get that to them, and then we're going to set up a meeting to discuss next steps with them. We're not 100% sure what that's going to look like. A best case would be, thank you, this is what we needed. We're going to proceed now with your updated WDR or whatever they're going to do. Worst case scenario would be, we need more, and then we'll have to dive into stage 2 of this. In the laboratory, on-site assessment was scheduled for this month. It's actually done. Kristen did the assessment yesterday. It's a very stressful time for someone that works in a laboratory, as having done that several times in my life. It's nothing better than having someone with very keen eyes poring over your entire operation. But she felt it went pretty well, so we're making improvements there. And we're continuing to replace a bunch of the capital equipment. We've got several pieces of equipment that are 15, 20 years old in there, and it's great that they've continued to run as reliably as they have, but I think we're on borrowed time with some of them. So we're making some improvements there. There was 11 corrective actions completed last month, and there's 1 pending. There's going to be a whole another set after the assessment. The 11 there is based on Kristen's internal assessment that she did. And then we'll have more findings from the assessment. Again, you know, sometimes I think it's hard to grasp what they mean by finding, because it's like different worlds, different levels of implication associated with that. It's anywhere from this piece of paper does not have a page number. That is literally a finding. Anywhere from you don't have the procedures necessary to identify something important. So there's no severity level they assign to these things. It just ends up being kind of a catch-all. So she's going to be busy over the next month. Public outreach, we did have 1 plant tour scheduled, but they had to cancel because of weather. That freak storm we had most of our March in 1 day. We are preparing the public outreach team. We met a couple weeks ago. We have about 6 volunteers from the different departments within the agency, and we kind of pre-gamed the season. First thing coming up is going to be Earth Day on the 26th. That is a very long day, but it's a cool event. Lots and lots of people. Probably the highest impact event that we've found so far. Is there any questions?
Questions? Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Still, good morning. We're still making it happen. If I can see that part with my glasses on. Okay, for the administrative department report. For risk and safety, the quarterly safety meeting was held and Vicki noted the awards earlier in the meeting that were awarded. And the monthly training topic for the month of March was electrical safety. I am continuing to evolve the risk and safety portion of this report to figure out what would be relevant to bring, so just look for it to continue to change. From a finance perspective, we were in compliance, we processed checks, we paid vendors. We attended the March Finance Committee meeting where we spent a lot of time talking about cash flow modeling, which then that cash flow modeling came here. So that was really our focus. For purchasing, again, same general purchasing duties. And right now our purchasing agent also takes care of front desk duties. So all of those were taken care of. General administration, as always, we perform anything that the general manager of the board asks usually. And from a billing customer service standpoint, connection fees paid were about $80,000. There were no inspections this month, so unfortunately I don't have any pictures to show, but hopefully that will change for next month. Are there any questions on the administrative department report?
Thank you, Liz.
Okay.
Richard.
I'm thinking I'll just highlight the one item, and that is the land exchange with the Papa Truckee Airport District and the TTSA has been finalized and inked. We're just waiting for it to record with the county, which should happen as early as today or sometime this week. So finally bring that one home to completion. Other than that, obviously, class and comp was a big focus, getting all that wrapped up to bring for today. Many of the projects were already touched on. One thing I wanted to highlight is some of the new technology that we've installed in the room, new cameras, better audio. Really want to thank Lucas for all of his efforts. We had a little bug we had to work through this morning, but I think overall the experience is becoming better every board meeting, and this should help continue that progress forward. So thank you, Lucas, for all your recommendations and hard work on that. And as you see, we have Lucas here every month to coordinate the audio visual, if you will. So that I think has been a big improvement. The other thing I just want to highlight is the 1 week in July that I'll be out is a board week. So if the board ends up naming an interim, they'll have the opportunity to take care of the board meeting that month. Or we'll work it out with staff. Just wanted to highlight that. I'm not going to repeat all the projects all the guys have worked on. We do have, I know we're getting asked a lot about training. We do have a lot of upcoming events that staff's going to take part in, and that CWA conference in Palm Springs. As in addition, I know Michael and Greg are going to be heading to San Diego to attend a pre-treatment training class as well. So we continue to invest in that. And we do have the upcoming safety day that CWA puts on here in the region.
Super. Thanks, Richard. Questions for the GM? None. Move on to the board of directors comments. Dan?
Done.
Bert?
Yeah, so I presented the land use guidelines to the Alpine Water District Board. Feedback was generally positive. The one thing that came up was how come only agency to agency and not private land sales and all that stuff, which I said that we had that discussion and that'll be an evolution over time. And then talked about the 295 million that we're going to raise over the next, 5-6 years. And that kind of perked up the interest even more on the land use stuff on, okay, how did you guys think about accelerating, those discussions like with Tom Don and others to go execute on getting some of that cash in for, they're very interested on making sure we maximize the amount of money there so that we can reduce, the outlay. And I said, look, it's land. It's only going to be worth so much. It's not going to pay $295 million for land. But yeah, it was a very good conversation. They appreciated the feedback. And that's where we're heading.
Yeah, actually that triggers for me. So reported similar information back to the Tahoe City PUD board. Asked them if they wanted a presentation from staff on any of that stuff. They did. The other board members didn't see a need for that, so I think we're good.
And I did reach out to all the GMs. The only one was Olympic Valley, so Jason's actually gonna attend their board meeting Thursday to give them go over the outline as well and answer any questions, or at least bring questions.
Yeah, North Tahoe Public Utility. Let me make sure I'm on here.
We can hear you, Scott.
Public Utility District. I brought the information to them, and they would actually like to have a presentation on potentially what the new plant's going to look like, and also a mapping of the land use. So they'll be reaching out to try to get that set up at one of the upcoming board meetings. They were actually very excited about both of them, so be a good thing for transparency.
Thanks, Scott. Anything else? Nope. Dale?
I'm glad to see they're excited, Scott. I just hope they're as excited to figure out how we're going to pay for it. One of the things that I would like to know, and I'm glad to see that the land exchange finally was inked. And does anybody have any idea how long this process took? I know that it was topic of discussion back when even Marcia Beals was our general manager. Do you, Mike, know how long that this process has been going on? Richard?
You've been here.
Yeah, when I was doing research to get caught up on it, I saw stuff going back into the 90s, but I can't recall the actual dates.
Fast moving. Yeah.
20 years?
More than that, possible.
More than 20 years.
30.
Well, we finally got it done, and I'll tell you, this was a milestone for things that got done at TTSA. I'm happy to see it was finally completed. That's all I have.
Dale? Yeah, nothing else for me. Again, I'll be out in May. So Scott, stay healthy.
I will.
There's nothing else. We'll adjourn from open session. Maybe take a 5-minute break and go into closed session. Okay. Thanks, Scott.